There was a lot of discussion you were going to strengthen ties with Capitol Hill, with the business community. How's that going?
Oh, it's going great. Things are just really great. The debt ceiling was no problem, and business community loves us, and they love the rhetoric, and no problems.
See, it's the only way we can get that laugh back on MSNBC. Anyway, Nia-Malika Henderson is national political reporter for The Washington Post. Republican strategist Kevin Madden served as Mitt Romney's 2008 campaign spokesman and remains a supporter, but not on the paid staff. And Cynthia Tucker is a Pulitzer Prize-winning syndicated columnist. Welcome all.
Great to be with you.
Jeez, Bill Daley just serving it up. You know, there's actually a little reporting, Nia. You know, you cover the White House as well. We know it's now trickling out that Pete Rouse is taking more of a COO role of sorts as the Daily Pluff axis. They're still in charge.
Yeah.
But clearly relations with Capitol Hill have soured enough that they felt they needed to bring back the guy with Capitol Hill experience.
Yeah, and everyone in the White House loved Pete Rouse. I mean, he was the one who a lot of people, especially the women, actually wanted to be the chief of staff. So, I mean, I think this White House is in a game of sort of lowering expectations about the economy and sort of admitting some of the things that have gone wrong, and they're making corrections in the wake of this book that came out about all the trouble that was happening, confidence men. So I think you're seeing some course correction.
Yeah, the hero of the book was Pete Rouse.
Yes.
And the way it goes, it is one of those things in Washington. Be careful. If the book praises you the most, then everybody thinks you're the leaker to the book. But, Kevin, I want to play for you this other Daily soundbite from this interview yesterday, a little more serious about sort of the process of Washington. Really gets to what Christy Whitman, what we were all listening to, was talking about earlier, too. Here's what he said.
I would take some responsibility for the relationship. That's part of my job. I think everybody in this room, everybody in media, everybody in this town, everybody active in politics has to take responsibility for some of the way our political system has gone.
There's no doubt it has hit a low point, and the assumption was the affable Daley and the affable Boehner were going to be able to pull this off. But the fact is, it doesn't matter how affable you are. There were harder politics to break.
Right, and the big problem is now is this is such a critical juncture for the president to be on the same page with his party up on Capitol Hill, and there's a big canyon between them. But I think the bigger worry about this is what Bill Daley didn't say, but what a lot of us could read into those remarks, is that there's a bit of daylight between the chief of staff and the president. And again, this is a very critical juncture going into what's going to be a brutal, by all analysis, is going to be a brutal re-election campaign, that there are people within the senior staff in the White House that are not on the same page with the president. So I see that as welcome news as a Republican, but it has to be very troubling for Democrat and Democratic allies.
Cynthia, did you see the same thing there? Did you read into that, what Kevin just read into that there? And obviously we have this report this morning that has gone public. We've been hearing about this, about Pete Rouse, but there's certainly course correction, is I guess the phrase that they want to use.
Well, if there is daylight between the president and Daley, it has become more pronounced since the president has taken on a more feisty and combative tone on the campaign trail. Right. That is unlikely to be something that Daley is comfortable with. He's a company man, as it were. That's why he was brought in. But let me say that the president needs his chief of staff less in re-election terms than he needs those Democrats on Capitol Hill. He needs them fired up. He needs Democrats in state legislatures fired up. He needs Democrats who were supporters in 2008 fired up. And the tone he's taken on now on the campaign trail is much more likely to fire them up than that tone of trying to compromise.
Well, let me ask you this. So, you know, they're trying to get this thing through, though. You know, on one hand, he's changed his tone and he's got a campaign message. But he does have to get something passed, does he not? Doesn't he have to, or do you not think so?
I don't think so. I don't think he has to get something passed. Let's face it, even if he were to get his original jobs bill passed as he had outlined it, most economists didn't think it was going to lift the economy that much anyway. I don't think that's any problem with the jobs bill necessarily. It's just the truth about how deep a hole we're in. So in some ways, the president is actually better off if the economy is still bad, being able to say it's still bad because those Republicans would not pass my jobs bill.
I understand. I get that argument. Now, I do know, and I just got told in my ear, Harry Reid announced and has told people he's going to the White House. So this is the first time we've actually seen a legislative meeting or some sort of, or at least the appearance that the White House is trying to come up with a strategy on how to actually pass this thing, and it appears that they want to try to figure out how to pass it through the Senate and then force the House's hand.
Yeah, I mean, hard to do, though, when the House is controlled by Eric Cantor and Boehner, and they have this, caucus of 80 Republicans who don't really want to see this thing pass. And to Cynthia's point, I think in some ways the rhetoric from Republicans has been that Obama didn't have a plan. He didn't have a jobs plan. He didn't have a plan to get the economy back on track. Now he does have a plan. He has something out there to talk about. So in some ways, I think Cynthia is right that even if it doesn't get passed, he at least has something to campaign on.
Now, Kevin, one of the big John Boehner talking points when he was minority leader is, where's the focus on jobs when he was hitting the president? There hasn't been a House Republican jobs bill that is sort of in the same form that the president did. A little pressure on House Republicans to at least respond here.
Well, look, if you,
in some sort of way.
If you look at the priorities of the Republican caucus when it comes, or the Republican conference when it comes to jobs, are reflected in the budget that they passed. We haven't seen a Democrat Senate pass a budget, and the budget that the president proposed wasn't serious about any of the big issues related to entitlement reform or anything on spending and deficit.
Well, this is that's about a medium term to a long term, but we have a short term problem.
But here's the thing too, and the big problem for the president is that this was a speech that he gave on jobs up there, and he has a piece of paper, but he's never put together the plan, the infrastructure to actually pass it. And what the American public, and this is where I disagree with the rest of the panel, is that what's going to happen, what's going to help the president is movement on the economy, not messages and talking about it in speeches on the campaign trail.
All right, stick around. Nia, Kevin, Cynthia, we're going to talk a little bit about the administration in waiting, apparently. Wait till you see all the stuff Mitt Romney has announced today. Let's bring back our panel, Nia-Malika Henderson, Kevin Madden, and Cynthia Tucker. Okay, Kevin Madden, this is for you. Jim DeMint clearly is listening to Stephen Stills on his iPod. Listen to what he said about the presidential field today.
I'm not concerned if someone's changed their position. I'm a recovering earmarker, and I led the effort to kill earmarks. We've got to convince a lot of people in Washington to change their positions because we've got to change the direction of the country.
Kevin, you said you've seen some other people who suddenly it's as if they're trying to make their peace with potentially supporting a nominee, Romney. Your team there feeling pretty good?
Well, look, I mean, politics and particularly campaigns is the art of persuasion, right? You're not going to have public opinion is not an event; it's an evolution. So part of the process of winning more voters and consolidating many of the coalitions that are going to be important to win an election. That's what this campaign has been about. So I think you'll remember that Jim DeMint was a supporter of Governor Romney in 2008. I'm sure he's very comfortable with Governor Romney.
And then he flirted with, he was upset about health care.
Right.
For a long period of time, and he's trying to make his way back.
That's right, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Governor Romney has made, he's made his argument about what he did in Massachusetts and why. But most importantly, and this is what campaigns are always about, they're always about the future, what he would do as president. He said very clearly he would repeal Obamacare with a waiver for the state.
Cynthia, this morning, the Romney campaign is churning out endorsement after endorsement this morning, including a national security team that looks very, very familiar. It's a lot of former Bush people. As somebody who is not the biggest supporter of former President Bush, do you think that is a problem for Mitt Romney at all?
What I think Governor Romney is doing is continuing his strategy of looking like the inevitable nominee and surrounding himself with people. The last person, obviously, last Republican who held the White House was George W. Bush. So those were the people who last had foreign policy experience, some of which is still relevant, some of which remains extremely unpopular with voters. But I think it is interesting that the governor continues his strategy of trying to appear the inevitable nominee.
Yeah, very quickly, any danger of playing the inevitability card when people want an outsider?
Yes, because he's still got a primary, and he's still got a tough, fight with Perry, and a still really active Tea Party. So there is some danger making the electability.
I want to second that. There's no inevitability. Elections have to be earned. Nominations have to be earned.
All right, shameless plug time. Go.
Tomorrow, Governor Romney is giving a speech on foreign policy at the Citadel in Charleston, beautiful South Carolina.
Wow, he's competing in
Charleston, South Carolina.
Is that what you're saying?
I want to once again tout the International Women's Media Foundation, which will hand out Courage Awards to extraordinary women at the end of the month, IWMF.org.
Good. Thanks for getting the address in there.
The Washington Post debate on Tuesday, co-sponsored with Bloomberg, all about the economy. Should be a good...
what time does that debate start?
It's at 8, only 90 minutes. I think
8 p.m.
Yes, 8
to 9:30. We'll be out by 9:30.
Exactly.
Bloomberg television. So you got to find that on my DirecTV.
And on the website, the Washington Post website.
Spin room like 9:31.
9:30. All right. Thank you all. That's it for this edition of the Daily Rundown.